of its Mi-24 to the Super Hind Mk2 standard. This was a low-cost version retaining Soviet-built weapons system, but replacing existing aiming systems with latest South African technology. In the course of related negotiations and further testing, the Algerians became attracted by the much more advanced Super Hind Mk3 configuration. This included a removal of most of obsolete, Soviet-made avionics. Only the air data system, rate gyros and radar altimeter were retained. This resulted in weight reduction of more than 1,800 kilograms. Instead, the South Africans installed a digital computer core, a new Doppler radar, GPS-assisted navigational system, the Arinkmil standard 1553 data bus, the Carl Zeiss Optronics Argos 410Z airborne observation system turret, a dual-feed, hydraulically driven Vector F2 chain turret with a 20mm Jot cannon and South African-made ZT-3 Ingwe anti-tank guided missiles. Finally, helping Algerians solve often problematic supply of spare parts, AH tackled the issue of logistics and relatively complex maintenance. The company made the Super Hind Mk3 user-friendly and maintainable even under most primitive conditions and helped Algerians obtain ability to completely overhaul their Super Hinds at home. Delighted by results, the Algerians renegotiated their order and had all 34 Mi-24s upgraded to Mk3 standard. While some of work was undertaken in South Africa, much of it was completed in Algeria. Super Hinds entered service in 2001. Although one helicopter was written off after an early training accident, the project proved successful beyond the imagination of most of the people involved. Several of Algerian pilots commented that they experienced no problems while re-qualifying, and pointed out the seamless integration of new components with the original helicopter as the reason for success of the project. Furthermore, they stressed, the weight savings considerably improved the hot and high performance of the Super Hind. Before soon, the type was blooded in combat against Islamist extremists in southern Algeria, and proved lethal beyond any doubt, especially by night. Unsurprisingly, the Super Hind Mk3 attracted lots of public attention abroad. Emboldened, the AH offered it to a number of East European air forces that were in the process of joining the NATO. At the same time, it intensified further research and development of more advanced variants, and began considering similar upgrades for the Mi-8s and Mi-17s. That's when the troubles began. The Russians fell all over AH. According to some contemporary Russian commentators, the Super Hind Mk3 was dangerous to fly. South African inventions would place Algerian crews at great risk. Ironically, while explaining that the South African modification of the Mi-24 was little else but taking pieces from Ruavalk and putting them into the Super Hind, the Russians launched an effort to obtain the best available information about AH-applied modifications. Failure of negotiations with Bulgaria and expenses for further research and development of the Super Hind drove the AH to the verge. President-elect, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, said the AH-64 AH-64 Seahawks helicopters, intended for the Mexican Navy, were too expensive. But Sputnik News, the Russian news site always lavish in praise of Russian weapons, helpfully offered some advice. Are there more affordable alternatives with similar capabilities out there? Sputnik asked, noting that the Mexican Navy already operates Mi-17 transport helicopters. Can you guess what's coming? Sikorsky and its parent company Lockheed Martin isn't the only game in town as far as naval helicopters go, Sputnik wrote last week. Russia's naval workhorse, the Ka-27, has comparable capabilities, and would likely to be much cheaper, if it were made available. The Ka-27M, the latest modification of the tried and proven Ka-27 design, is equipped with an advanced integrated radar, acoustic and magnetometric sensors and SIGINT suite, and a 360-degree monitoring system enabling the semi-automatic search and detection of surface, air and ground-based targets, the news site said. Armament can include light homing torpedoes, 50 and 250 kg, 110 to 551 pound, anti-submarine bombs, heavy machine guns, and 4 external hardpoints for an assortment of other weapons. The customizable package would almost certainly be enough for fighting drug traffickers. Sputnik described the Seahawks' price, which it claimed to be $170 million apiece, as hefty. But Sputnik was vaguer about the cost of a Ka-27. Details on the price of the gunship Ka-27s are hard to come by, although a single Ka-27 PV, the armed version of the Ka-27 PS, has an estimated price tag of $14.5 million. The Russian Defense Ministry's 2014 and 2016 outlays to modernize existing anti-submarine warfare configuration Ka-27 PLS came in at just over $10 million apiece. Sputnik also praised the Ka-27 as being cheap to operate, sturdy and reliable, and customizable for a variety of missions. The helicopters are used by Russia's Border Guard Service, as well as the Algerian, Chinese, Indian, Syrian, Ukrainian, Vietnamese and Yemeni navies. But Mexico, the southern neighbor of the United States? Not a chance, says Inigo Guevara, a former director of Mexico's National Security Council and now director at Jane's Defense and Security in Washington, D.C. First, López Obrador and his transition team are new to the helicopter issue and lack the defense expertise to assess it. Guevara also noted that no actual contract for the Seahawks has been signed. The Mexican Navy is looking for a helicopter, capable of anti-submarine and anti-surface warfare, to equip 8 light frigates being built under license from a Dutch shipyard. The first will be launched late this year, but building them all will take 6 to 8 years, which means the AH-64 order would be staggered over several years. While the European NH-90 NFH
I'd rather do it the same way we did again. Be safe, not sorry. Oh, okay. Person, you're right. I think there's a wire clamp. Right. Okay, so that's it. Daily point on. 5, 2, 3. That should be good.
A replacement for the service's Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk and Boeing AH-64 Apache helicopters. The V-280 will have a crew of 4, including 2 pilots, and be capable of transporting up to 14 troops. Its cruising speed will be 280 knots and its top speed will be 300 kts. It's designed for a range of 2,100 nautical miles and an effective combat range of 500 to 800 nautical miles, although the Army's requirements for the demonstrator call for hot and high hover performance, at 6,000 feet and 95 f, and the ability to self-deploy 2,100 nautical miles at a speed of at least 230 knots. Featuring a triple redundant flight-by-wire flight control system and cutting-edge avionics, the first prototype of the next-generation helicopter is expected to perform its first flight in the next few months. On August 30th, what looks like a 100% complete aircraft, sporting the registration N280BH, was spotted at Bell Helicopter Amarillo Assembly Center, where the demonstrator aircraft began ground vibration testing with a 95% complete helicopter back in February 2017. The Valor is probably being prepared for engine tests ahead of its maiden flight. The D-64 GE419 engines and gearboxes in the nacelles are clearly visible.
Years of active service. Once the backbone of Army and the Royal Navy, the Lynx is being replaced by the more advanced Wildcat, and the remaining twin-engine rotorcraft with 657 Squadron are on a tour of southern England before their final decommissioning. The Lynx was introduced into service in 1978 as a multi-purpose military helicopter. It was originally developed for the British Army and Royal Navy as a replacement for the earlier Westland Scout and Wasp helicopters. From the start, it was ahead of its time as the first aerobatic helicopter capable of executing loops and rolls. Though originally intended as a battlefield utility helicopter, it soon gained a formidable reputation as an anti-armor tank buster as well as a search and rescue, reconnaissance, aerobatic display, and anti-submarine platform. With over 450 built, the twin-engine jet turbine helicopter was made in several variants, including a Navy version with foldable rotors, a tricycle undercarriage, and a deck restraint system to allow it to operate from destroyers and frigates. It saw service in all climates from Southeast Asia to Northern Ireland to Antarctica and has participated in every major British military operation of the past 4 decades. But its greatest claim to fame came on August 11, 1986 when a specially modified Lynx with a set of advanced experimental rotors was flown by Trevor Eggington to set an absolute speed record of 400.87 km per hour, 216.45 knots, 249.09 miles per hour. That mark still
requires costly repairs. The Pentagon wants to bring in new aircraft sooner rather than later. But the long timeline for the Future Vertical Lift program, known as FVL, is raising concerns that manufacturing plants may go idle for several years after current helicopters go out of production over the next decade. Top helicopter suppliers such as Lockheed Martin, Boeing and Bell expect to keep their lines running with upgrades, remanufacturing work and foreign military sales. It is inevitably disruptive for manufacturers any time the Pentagon stops buying something and shifts to new models. In the helicopter modernization effort, there is potentially a large break between legacy and future aircraft, said Burke. If that break is too long, we will suffer. Most likely, however, the Pentagon and Congress will take action to make sure plants are not shut down, he said. The defense industry in recent years has raised alarms about the health of the helicopter sector following big-ticket program cancellations by the Army. 2 teams are building prototypes, mostly at their own expense. The Pentagon has promised about $1 billion worth of research and development funds for both teams. But the companies are also pouring in billions of their own money. Bell Helicopter and Lockheed Martin developed an advanced tilt-rotor concept. Sikorsky and Boeing have designed a coaxial helicopter, which features a pair of rotors, one atop the other. The Pentagon is running a separate program for the avionics and software architecture. The so-called backbone is important, said Freeland, because whichever aircraft is selected has to have an open architecture so sensors and weapons can be plugged in and updated at far less cost than current closed aircraft. Having a flexible software architecture helps the defense industrial base, said Freeland, as it opens the door for foreign sales and